Okay, let's begin Chapter 2 of English 3, Writing About Literature. Uh, we're going to look at two short stories, one called Angela's Ashes and one called The Street, and then you're going to write an essay. This one is an actual essay, so pay attention to the stories because you're going to compare and contrast them. Remember, compare is when you look at things that are similar between them, and contrast is when you look at things that are different between them. And what you're doing is a literary analysis. So you're going to see what's similar between them. They're not going to have the same characters, they're not going to have the same setting, but they are going to have similar themes. So you got to look at the lesson that the story is trying to teach. Okay, first we're going to start with Angela's Ashes. It's by Frank McCourt, and it's a memoir, meaning this is a story from his actual life. And so the main character, the narrator, is Frank McCourt. To read the following excerpt from the novel. Man sits by the fire, shivering, and we know something is wrong when she makes no move for a cigarette. She says she feels a cold coming and she'd love to have a tardy drink, a lemonade. But there's no money in the house, not even for bread in the morning. She drinks tea and goes to bed. The bed creaks all night with her twistings and turnings, and she keeps us awake with her moaning for water. In the morning, she stays in bed, still shivering, and we keep quiet. If she sleeps long enough, Malachi and I will be too late for school. Hours pass, and still she makes no move, and when I know it's well past school time, I start the fire for the kettle. She stirs and calls for lemonade, but I give her a jam jar of water. I ask her if she'd like some tea, as she acts like a woman gone deaf. She looks flushed, and it's odd she doesn't even mention cigarettes. We sit quietly by the fire, Malachi, Michael, Alfie, myself. We drink our tea while Alfie chews the last bit of bread covered with sugar. He makes us laugh the way he smears the sugar all over his face and grins at us with his fat, sticky cheeks. But we can't laugh too much, or man will jump out of the bed and order Malachi and me off to school, where we'll be killed for being late. We don't laugh long. There is no more bread, and we're hungry, the four of us. We can get no more credit at O'Connell's shop. We can't go near Grandma either. She yells at us all the time because Dad is from the north, and he never sends money home from England where he is working in a munitions factory. Grandma says we could starve to death for all he cares. That would teach Mam a lesson for marrying a man from the north with sallow skin, an odd manner, and a look of the Presbyterian about him. Still, I'll have to try Kathleen O'Connell once more. I'll tell her my mother is sick above in the bed. My brothers are starving, and will all be dead for the want of bread. I put on my shoes and run quickly through the streets of Limerick to keep myself warm against the February frost. You can look in people's windows and see how cozy it is in their kitchens, with fires glowing or ranges black and hot, everything bright in the electric light, cups and saucers on the tables with plates of sliced bread, pounds of butter, jars of jam, smells of fried... Boy, you could really do some commas here. Why are there no commas? Jars of jam, smells of fried eggs, and rashers coming through the windows. Enough to make the water run in your mouth, and families sitting there digging in all smiling. The mother crisp and clean in her apron, everyone washed, and the Sacred Heart of Jesus looking down on them from the wall, suffering and sad, but still happy with all that, food, light, good Catholics at their breakfast. I try to find music in my own head, but all I can find is my mother moaning for lemonade. Lemonade. There's a van pulling away from South's pub, leaving crates of beer and lemonade outside. So lemonade's an alcoholic lemonade. Outside, there isn't a soul in the street. In a second, I have 2 bottles of lemonade up under my jersey, and I saunter away trying to look innocent. There's a bread van outside Kathleen O'Connell's shop. The back door is open on shelves of steaming newly baked bread. The van driver is inside the shop having tea and a bun with Kathleen, and it's no trouble for me to help myself to a loaf of bread. It's wrong to steal from Kathleen with the way she's always good to us, but if I go in and ask her for bread, she'll be annoyed and tell me I'm ruining her morning cup of tea, which she'd like to have in peace. Ease and comfort, thank you. It's easier to stick the bread up under my jersey with the lemonade and promise to tell everything in confession. My brothers are back in bed playing games under the overcoats, but they jump when they see the bread. We tear at the loaf because we're too hungry to slice it. We make tea from this morning's leaves. When my mother stirs, Malachi holds the lemonade bottle to her lips, and she gasps till she finishes it. If she likes it that much, I'll have to find more lemonade. Malachi drifts off, and I lie there thinking of jam. Wouldn't it be lovely to have another loaf of bread and a jar of strawberry jam, or any kind of jam? I can't remember ever seeing a jam van making a delivery, and I wouldn't want to be like Jesse James, blasting my way into a shop demanding jam. That would surely lead to a hanging. There's a cold sun coming through the window, and I'm sure it must be warmer outside, and wouldn't my brothers be surprised if they woke and found me there with more bread and jam? They gobble everything, and then go on about my sins and the hanging. Mam is still asleep, though her face is red, and there's a strangling sound when she snores. I have to be careful going through the street because it's a school day, and if Guard Dennehy sees me, he'll drag me off to school, and Mr. O'Halloran will knock me all over the classroom. The guard is in charge of school attendance, and he loves chasing you on his bicycle and dragging you off to school by the ear. There's a box sitting outside the door of one of the big houses on Barrington Street. I pretend to knock at the door so that I can see what's in the box. A bottle of milk, a loaf of bread, cheese, tomatoes, and oh God, a jar of marmalade. I can't shove all that under my jersey. Oh God, should I take the whole box? The people passing by pay me no attention. I might as well take the whole box. My mother would say you might as well be hung for a sheep as I am. I lift the box and try to look like a messenger boy to making a delivery, and no one says a word. Malachi and Michael are beside themselves when they see what's in the box, and they're soon gobbling thick cuts of bread slathered with golden marmalade. Alfie has the marmalade all over his face and hair and a good bit on his legs and belly. We wash down the food with cold tea because we have no fire to heat it. Mam mumbles again for lemonade, and I give her half the second bottle to keep her quiet. She calls for more, and I mix it with water to stretch it because I can't be spending my life running around lifting lemonades from pubs. We're having a fine time of it till Mam begins to rave in the bed about her lovely little daughter taken from her, and her twin boys gone before they were 3, and why couldn't God take the rich for a change, and is there any lemonade in the house? Michael wants to know if Mam will die, and Malachi tells him you can't die till a priest comes. That's the end of the excerpt. The story, of course, keeps going, but that's the end of the excerpt. So, we get a little hint of why his mother's so depressed. She lost 3 of her children. She's got 4 left, so you'd hope that she could pull it together to be a good mom for the ones that are left. But, we're not always that lucky. So she lies in bed and calls for her alcoholic lemonades. A theme in this is definitely poverty, because they're starving, they've got no money for food, he's got to steal to get them food. But there's also some hope. He gets that box of food, and that gives him some hope that things will get better, that maybe Frank can provide for them. Frank being the oldest boy, it seems like he's the oldest boy. Maybe Frank can provide for them where their mother isn't. Frank knows all the people around the block, and he knows how to procure things. So there's poverty, but there's also hope. Okay, in Petrie and connotation in this street. Okay, Petrie's novel The Street is set in Harlem in the 40s. The main character is Ludi Johnson, a single mother. The state of these hard times, Ludi struggles to provide a quality life for her son. She tries to balance her dream of becoming a singer with her desire to keep her son out of trouble. Read this excerpt. There was a cold November wind blowing through 116th Street. It rattled the tops of garbage cans, sucked window shades out through the top of open windows, and set them flapping back against the windows. And it drove most of the people off the street in the block between 7th and 8th Avenues, except for a few hurried pedestrians who bent double in an effort to offer the least possible exposed surface to its violent assault. It found every scrap of paper along the street. Theater throwaways, announcements of dances and lodge meetings, the heavy waxed paper that loaves of bread had been wrapped in, the thinner waxed paper that had enclosed sandwiches, old envelopes, newspapers. Fingering its way along the curb, the wind set bits of paper to dancing high in the air, so that a barrage of paper swirled into the faces of people on the street. It even took time to rush into doorways and areaways and find chicken bones and pork chop bones and push them along the curb. It did everything it could to discourage the people walking along the street. It found all the dirt and dust and grime on the sidewalk and lifted it up so that the dirt got into their noses, making it difficult to breathe. The dust got into their eyes and blinded them, and the grit stung their skins. It wrapped newspapers around the feet, entangling them until people cursed deep in their throats, stamped their feet, kicked at the paper. The wind blew it back again and again until they were forced to stoop and dislodge the paper with their hands. And when the wind grabbed their hats, pried their scarves around their necks, stuck its fingers inside the coat collars, blew their coats away from their bodies. The wind lifted Ludi Johnson's hair away from the back of her neck so that she felt suddenly naked and bald, for her hair had been resting softly and warmly against her skin. She shivered as the cold fingers of the wind touched the back of her neck, explored the sides of her head. It even blew her eyelashes away from her eyes so that her eyeballs were bathed in a rush of coldness that she had to blink in order to read the words on the sign swaying back and forth over her head. Each time she thought she had the sign in focus, the wind pushed it away from her so that she wasn't certain whether it said 3 rooms or 2 rooms. If it was 3, why, she would go in and ask to see it. But if it said 2, why, there wasn't any point. Even with the wind twisting the sign away from her, she could see that it had been there for a long time, because its original coat of white paint was streaked with rust where years of rain and snow had finally eaten the paint off down to the metal, and the metal had slowly rusted, making a dark red stain like blood. It was 3 rooms. The wind held it still for an instant in front of her, and then swooped it away until it was standing at an impossible angle on the rod that suspended it from the building. She read it rapidly. 3 rooms, steam heat, parquet floors, respectable tenants. Reasonable. That's the end of that excerpt. This one, I admit, is a little harder to get a grasp on what's happening because it talks about the wind for 90% of it. And you're like, okay, I get it. There's cold wind. What does that have to do with anything? But notice what the wind is affecting. It's just garbage cans, windows, and loose paper. This place is dirty, unkept. So she lives in kind of a crappy neighborhood, is the hint you're getting. So she's also dealing with poverty, just like in the other one. But in the end, she's also got hope, because she finds this room, this 3-room steamy parquet floor, respectable tenants, reasonable. So the themes you're looking for there, you can pick poverty, you can pick hope, you can do both, but your goal is going to be to pull out quotes from each one to support what you're saying. Let's open up the document real quick. Okay. New. Yeah. Google Doc. So you're going to need an intro, a body, body 2, I did it again, and a conclusion. Body 1, what you're going to want is stuff from Angela's Ashes. Body 2, you're going to want stuff from the street. You're going to need a topic sentence, a quote, and analysis of the quote. Analysis, remember, being explanations of why you picked that quote. What does that quote mean to you? There's a reason you picked that quote, and you have to share it in your analysis. Then come back to the intro. and list all the things you're about to say, but without explaining yourself. So if you said in the theme, if you said the theme was suffering, then you'd say Angela's Ashes in the Street are similar because they both share a theme of suffering. Then you would go down into the body 1 and explain what you mean by that. And body 2, you would explain what you mean by that. And then in the conclusion, you would repeat, but now with authority. Now you've proven your point. So you could say, in conclusion, or now you see that, and then you just repeat what you said in the first paragraph. In conclusion, the two stories share a theme of suffering. Something like that. Okay. Back here. Exercise. Details in the street. Connotation. Flashcards. If this doesn't make sense, these exercises should help you make more sense. Characterization is the description of a character. Direct characterization is when they just directly tell you this person is a happy person, this person is a sad person. Indirect characterization is when they just show you this person is acting happy, so you know that they're a happy person. This person is acting sad. Well, ma'am, his mom in the Angela's Ashes got indirect characterization. They just told you what she was doing, and you pieced together that she was kind of not a very good mom. Infer is when you assume something. To examine evidence and gather information is not directly stated. So when you sort of figure out what something else is saying without them directly saying it. Dialogue is a conversation between two characters. Figurative language is a language that represents representative language. It doesn't mean exactly what it says. It's got a literal meaning and a figurative meaning. Hyperbole is an exaggeration. Imagery is something that makes you imagine an image or a sound or a taste or a feeling. Allusion is a reference to something else. Irony is the opposite of what is expected. Verbal irony is like sarcasm. Situational irony is when you expect one thing to happen and the opposite of it happens. Dramatic irony. What was the difference between situational and dramatic? There's a difference between what's expected to happen and what happens. Yeah, that's what I said. Dramatic. When the audience knows something that the characters don't. Connotative meaning. That's the emotional bias you have towards something, the emotion associated with a word. Realism is a literary movement, philosophical movement in the 1900s that focused on direct observation of the world and a rejection of romanticism. Romanticism was all about heightened emotion and everything being the most and the best. It's either the best or it's the worst, and everything is just amazing or it's just awful. Realism was the opposite of that. It was real life is much more muted and low key than that. Okay, so remember this is an essay, so don't forget to quote and ask me about how to cite. I've got the citations. Actually, let me see if. No, that's in on my work computer. I'm at home. Okay, that'll do it.